Tonight you looked up at the sky and felt something. Maybe it was awe, maybe it was smallness, maybe it was the strange, quiet sense that something out there is watching. You didn't choose to feel it. It arrived on its own, uninvited, the way a dream does. And here is the part nobody tells you. That feeling is not proof of the divine. It is proof of your brain. A brain that was shaped, over millions of years, to feel exactly that. That is not a dismissal. That is far more interesting than a dismissal. Because the real question is not whether God exists. The real question is why every human civilization that has ever lived on this planet, without exception, invented one. Or many. Why the Sumerians, the Aztecs, the ancient Egyptians, the Aboriginal Australians, the Norse, the Vedic peoples of the Indus Valley, and the hunter-gatherers of sub-Saharan Africa all looked at the same universe and arrived, independently, at the same answer. There is something behind all of this, something with intention, something watching. That convergence is not an accident, it is a signal, and it points not outward into the cosmos but inward, into the architecture of a 3-pound organ sitting behind your eyes. Your brain is not a truth detector, it never was. It is a survival machine. It was built by evolution to keep you alive long enough to reproduce, and it will sacrifice accuracy for speed every single time. That trade-off created something extraordinary. It created the cognitive foundation of religious belief. Not as a bug, as a feature. Here is where it starts. Anthropologist Pascal Boyer, in his landmark work on the cognitive science of religion, identified something he called the hyperactive agency detection device. The name is clinical. The idea is electrifying. Your brain is wired to detect agents, beings with intention, with will, with the capacity to cause things to happen. And it is calibrated to over-detect them, not to find exactly the right number of agents, to find too many. Why? Because of asymmetric cost. Imagine you are walking through tall grass on the African savanna 200,000 years ago. You hear a rustle. Your brain has two choices. It can assume the rustle is the wind, a random event caused by nothing. Or it can assume the rustle is a lion, an agent with hunger and intent. If it assumes lion and is wrong, you run away from the wind. You waste energy. You feel embarrassed, briefly. If it assumes wind and is wrong, you are dead before you finish the thought. Evolution does not tolerate that second error. So your brain learned to always choose lion. Always assume the agent. Always find the hidden watcher in the noise. You are descended from every ancestor who heard a rustle and ran. The ones who didn't run are not your ancestors. They became lunch. This is not ancient history. This is happening in your brain right now. When your car breaks down on the highway, your first instinct is anger at the car, as though it betrayed you. When a ball rolls in an unexpected direction, you feel something almost like suspicion. When two triangles move across a screen in a certain pattern, you immediately interpret them as chasing each other, as threatening each other, as having feelings. Psychologist Fritz Heider demonstrated this in 1944 with nothing but two triangles in a circle moving on film. Viewers did not see shapes. They saw stories. They saw intention. They saw minds that weren't there. Your brain cannot help it. Agency detection is always on. It has no off switch. Now stretch that tendency across an entire landscape. Rain that destroys crops. A volcano that erupts and buries a village. A drought that lasts for 7 years. A child born healthy in the season of death. Your brain, this tireless, hyperactive agent detector, does not register these as random physical events. It registers them as actions. And actions require actors. Something made the rain fall. Something caused the volcano. Something decided to spare the child. That something needed a name, so your ancestors gave it one. But agency detection is only the foundation. The architecture goes deeper. Cognitive anthropologist Harvey Whitehouse has spent decades studying why religious rituals take such consistent forms across cultures, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. He identified two universal modes: high arousal, rare rituals that bond small groups through shared intense experience, think initiation ceremonies, vision quests, firewalking. And low arousal, frequently repeated rituals that create what he calls doctrinal cohesion in larger communities. Daily prayers, seasonal ceremonies, the liturgical calendar. Two completely different mechanisms, but both powered by the same engine, the social brain. Because religion did not emerge in isolation, it emerged in groups. And groups have a problem that single organisms do not. Groups require cooperation between individuals who are not related by blood. Cooperation between strangers. And cooperation between strangers requires trust. And trust requires a shared framework for what is true, what is sacred, and what is forbidden. A God who watches everything solves this problem elegantly. In 2012, researcher Neuroscience published a series of studies that would become foundational to the field. He found that people who were primed to think about a watching God gave more money to strangers in economic games. Not because they were more virtuous, because they felt observed. The invisible watcher activated the same neural systems as the visible human audience. And when someone believes the universe itself is watching, their behavior in the dark matches their behavior in the light. This is what Neuroscience called the big God hypothesis. Big gods, moralizing, omniscient, punishment-capable gods, appear to have spread specifically in societies that needed to scale beyond the natural limits of human trust. A band of 30 people cooperates through kinship and reputation. A society of 30,000 needs something else. It needs a cosmic auditor who sees everything and forgets nothing. Your ancestors did not invent morality and then find a God to enforce it. They invented the God first. And morality followed from the watching. But there is a third layer. The strangest layer. The one that science has only recently begun to fully map. Your brain has a default mode network, a cluster of regions that activates when you are not focused on a task, when you are daydreaming, when you are imagining other people's minds, when you are constructing narratives about yourself. Neuroscientist Andrew Newberg has spent 2 decades scanning the brains of meditating monks, praying nuns, and people in spiritual ecstasy. What he found is that deeply religious experiences do not light up random, chaotic parts of the brain. They follow specific, predictable neural pathways. The same pathways that generate your sense of self. Your sense of where your body ends and the world begins. Your sense of time when those pathways are altered through fasting, through rhythmic chanting, through extreme physical exertion, through certain plants that your ancestors discovered thousands of years ago. The boundary between self and world begins to dissolve. The sense of a separate, isolated ego softens, and what floods in to replace it feels, to the person experiencing it, like contact, like presence, like something vast and conscious and older than everything, pressing in from the outside. That feeling is real. The neural experience is real. Whether what it points to is real is a question science cannot answer. But the experience itself, the oceanic feeling, the dissolution, the sense of divine presence, is a predictable output of a predictable brain under predictable conditions. Every culture discovered this independently, and every culture built theology around it. You are not irrational for feeling this. You are human. Your brain was built by 4 billion years of pressure to find meaning, detect watchers, and bind communities through shared belief. The feeling of the sacred is not a malfunction. It is the sound of your most ancient cognitive machinery doing exactly what it was designed to do. None of this answers the question of whether something is actually out there. It doesn't try to. Science can explain why a brain would produce the experience of God without settling the question of whether God produced the brain. That gap remains. It may always remain. But here is what changes when you understand this. The next time you look up at the sky and feel that quiet, uninvited sense of being watched, you will know that you are feeling one of the oldest things a human being can feel. Not a weakness. Not a superstition. A 200,000-year-old signal from an organ that learned, long before language existed, that the most dangerous thing in the universe was to be alone in the dark without a watcher. Tonight, when the clouds move and the light shifts and something in you stirs without a name, you will know what that is. It is your ancestors. Still running from the rustle in the grass, still reaching with the only tools evolution gave them towards something larger than themselves. The feeling arrived uninvited. It always does. That is not proof of the divine, that is proof of you.